This is the Lessons in Positivity videocast. Here's your host, Scott Peterson.
Greetings from the Positive Athlete Studios in Atlanta, Georgia. I'm Scott Peterson, and welcome to Lessons in Positivity. We have a great show for you today. First, Colton Parayko from the Stanley Cup champion St. Louis Blues will be joining us, and wait till you hear his journey to the National Hockey League and what he's doing in the St. Louis community as a positive athlete. Next, you'll hear about Bailey Julian, a high school hockey player from the Pittsburgh area, and his battle with Hodgkin's lymphoma. Not only how he beat this disease, but how he helped hundreds of other cancer patients while doing so. And finally, in our last segment called Positive Athlete Ideas, Pam Jonker from Children's Healthcare of Atlanta gives you some tips on how you can help kids with cancer in your community. So let's get started with this week's Lessons in Positivity. We're joined by Colton Parayko, the defenseman from the Stanley Cup champion St. Louis Blues. Welcome, Colton.
Hello, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. So that had to be just a dream come true from a kid from Canada who's been playing hockey for a long time, and all of a sudden you're holding the Stanley Cup over your head. Tell us what that experience was like.
Yeah, it was pretty special, obviously. Like you mentioned, being a kid from Canada, I grew up in skates, basically. Had an outdoor rink that was about a 2-minute walk from my house. So after school, every single day, I'm on the outdoor rink. And it was a tradition back home. We call it Hockey Night in Canada, and that's every Saturday. So there's games from the afternoon all the way through night. So basically, you just sit on the couch and watch hockey for hours and kind of mix in dinner in between. But just being from Canada and playing hockey my whole life, growing up, loving the sport, I've obviously looked forward to making it to the NHL in the first place, and then getting the opportunity to win the Stanley Cup was something very special and something very humbling, because there's been a lot of players that have went through the league that haven't had the opportunity to win the Stanley Cup, and that's obviously what we play for and what we've worked really hard for and towards.
I'm going to go back to you when you were younger, and I saw a coach describe you as Bambi on skates when you first came out. And did anybody ever tell you you were too something, too slow, too small, or whatever, and then and use that as something to be optimistic, though, that you could still come and do what you're doing now?
Yeah, for sure. There's always things that you need to improve on, and especially when you're kind of growing up, you get told of different areas that you got to work on. But my biggest thing, I would say, as a lesson would be to not take it critically, but take it as a way of getting better. Even now that I'm in the NHL and the top level, I still make sure to be coachable. I think being coachable is important, and they're not necessarily trying to be negative towards you or towards what you're doing. It's just trying to help you out and being open-minded, because there's a lot of different ways to be successful at sports, and a lot of different ways to do different things successfully. So different players have different ways of getting from A to B, and it might not be the same, but I think you just got to be open to different options and being aware of what's the best way for you and how you can help yourself and also the team.
Yeah, I think a lot of times kids think that coaches are just being critical, or they don't like them because they're giving them some criticism. And really what coaches are trying to do is get the kid to say, hey, I believe in you. I see talent in you, but there's some things you have to correct if you want to get where you want to go. Is that the way you kind of felt with coaches, as you look back on it, is that something that you kind of realize coaches might have been telling you then?
Yeah, for sure. And I just wanted to make sure I was a learner and a coachable player, and just kind of making sure I was working hard every single practice and game. And I've had some tough coaches that they were screamers or yellers or whatever you want to say. But I think looking back, those were my best coaches, and those were some of the coaches that helped shape me who I am now today, and have kind of pushed me to be a better player, and that's helped me for sure.
You have an interesting story about a young lady named Layla Anderson who you befriended, and can you talk about her and your relationship and how that all kind of grew? Because it's a fantastic story of how you gave back to the community and showed the community how you should be treating people with diseases and disabilities and things.
Yeah, so basically just this girl, Layla Anderson, and myself, we just created a special bond, and we've become really close friends, and it's been a lot of fun. She was diagnosed with HLH and in St. Louis here, and she's been a huge hockey fan for many years, and she's always been on the Blues side. But I still remember my first time meeting her was at a signing after one of the games, and has not yet been diagnosed with HLH, so she's always been a fan, kind of from my perspective. And a few years down the road, I was told that there was going to be a little girl that was going to be there for warm-ups and asking for a stick. So I went out for warm-ups. I was looking for her, and I saw her, and so I made sure I signed my stick and gave it to her. And the next day or 2 days later, we host a Halloween as a Blues team. So any children from the Children's Hospital that are able to come from there, they come to the arena, and we host like a little Halloween trick or treat for them. So we kind of have different stations, and they get candy and gifts. And so she was able to come, and so she came to that, and I just kind of remembered seeing her from the game, and so I went over and I linked up with her and made sure to just swing around to all the different stations with her, help her get her candy and stuff like that. And after that, we just kind of created a bond. We spent about an hour together that day, and I went to the hospital about a week later and visited her there, and I just kept making frequent visits. But she was just such a positive kid that I really enjoyed being around her, and to see that how she was being positive in such a tough time was really impressive. And I didn't get the chance to see what she was going through, but I can only imagine.
Yeah, that is so cool. And I think that even young kids could be spending more time with kids with disabilities or diseases and things like that. You don't have to be a famous hockey player to give back in your community like that. You and I have a connection in that my niece Allison, who passed away unfortunately back in December with a brain tumor. You spent some time with her, and you know what, when you do things like the Children's Hospital, and you work with Ronald McDonald House, and so why is that so important to you, Colton?
Just first off, the community is important to me, the St. Louis community, obviously, but the kids themselves, the families. It's a difficult time for everybody, obviously. If you're in that situation, it's not easy, and I personally think that being in this position, I'm fortunate. I'm very lucky to be where I'm at right now, and for me to do such a small gesture for myself, which would be showing up to the Ronald McDonald House, showing up to the hospital, and changing lives is a pretty big impact from myself. And I've had families tell me that they haven't seen their kid smile in 3 months, and until I came in, or they haven't seen their kid run in a year, and they were running down the hallway at the hospital with me. So those things are going to stick with me forever, and those things are special to me. And it's something that, like I mentioned, it's a small gesture for myself, but it goes a long way for not only the kids, but the families. You had a chance to read the story of Bailey Julian, who's in the Positive Athlete book, and a high school hockey player from the Pittsburgh area, and we're going to get a chance to talk to Bailey here in a little bit. Tell me what you read that story. What impacted you about that story? What did you like about who Bailey is and what he did? He sounds unbelievable. Just what he was going through, obviously, and kind of, it sounds like he's at a position where before he was diagnosed, he was obviously living life, playing hockey and enjoying, and just to get that news and would be all of a sudden, like he mentioned, a stop in his life and a stop in everything. So the way that he approached everything was, in my mind, impressive. Just the way that he went about it, and he mentioned being positive in there a numerous amount of times, and I think that was a huge help. But he also was helping others in the hospital. He started learning about different things in the hospital, like he mentioned, and being able to, kind of like you touched on earlier, other kids helping other kids at the hospital, and being able to take what you've been through and help others is pretty unique and pretty special. So for him to be able to grasp that idea and grasp that concept, and be in a positive light in such a tough time is not something that everybody can do, and it can be beneficial, though, like he mentioned. And obviously he started the program where you get some PJs, you get your notebook, and if you're get diagnosed into the hospital and get sent there. So that, just little things like that he understood that made his stay just a little bit better. If he can help any families that go in there and help them feel more comfortable, help them enjoy their time, then that's what he has done. And for someone of that age and someone that's going through that, to even think of that or to even kind of put that all together is that's one of a kind for sure.
I think that one of the things as you read the stories in the book, in the Positive Athlete book, is that when athletes started thinking about other people, when they started, they may have been hit hard, like Bailey gets this news about Hodgkin's lymphoma, and then but when he started focusing on other people was when his circumstances changed. And I think that's a great lesson for not whether even if you're in that kind of position or you're playing sports, as you start focusing on your team, you start focusing on these kind of things other than yourself, a lot of times, that great things are going to happen or positive things are going to happen.
Yeah, I agree 100%.
Well, you are definitely a positive athlete, and thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us and talking to our audience about this type of thing. It's so important, and coaches will love hearing a lot of the things you say, and I hope the kids that are listening to this will take your advice on these things. I mean, you really have a unique perspective, and we hope that at the time we're taping this that you are sequestered and quarantined, as everybody is, and we wish you the best in this. We hope the hockey season gets kicked up again, and we'll all be rooting for you to get a repeat. But even if they don't start the season, you can say you're Stanley Cup champions for a whole other year, right?
Exactly. So yeah, we're back to back, I guess, if we don't end up playing. But no, thank you very much for having me. It's been a pleasure, and thank you very much for putting these videos together for kids and coaches, and they're great. So I look forward to seeing this one and many more.
Next up, we're going to talk to Bailey Julian, who Colton and I just talked about his story in Lessons in Positivity. Joining us now from Pittsburgh is Bailey Julian, one of our positive athletes, and we've been talking about him. And Bailey, welcome to the show. And first of all, we want to ask how you're doing, because as we talked with Colton, you had Hodgkin's lymphoma.
Well, hi, thank you for having me. I've been doing fine ever since remission back in 2017. I've been on the ice, around the rink, just doing everything I can to stay active.
That's a great news, and that's and one that we were all happy to hear when you beat cancer, and so probably always going to be a part of your life, right? Talk about when you first started playing hockey. What did you love about it?
It was just something different, where like you had to think about your skating in the game rather than like martial arts, where I was just doing like my own, like not thinking about like skating per se. Just, like it was like a whole new aspect. Like I have to like focus on skating, staying like within the lines and all that stuff. So it was just a different game, and I like how it was different. But then again, the team aspect I really liked as well whenever I started playing.
Yeah, the team aspect is so much fun. People who are playing any kind of team sport love their teammates and love that whole camaraderie and working together and those kind of things. So you had it all kind of going together, and then on your 16th birthday, you got some bad news. Talk about that day, and talk about what your first thoughts were when the doctor delivers this news, and tell them about what it was.
Yeah, so the whole thing starts about like Thanksgiving time, whenever like I'd be like more out of breath than usual after a game, and I'd notice my face would swell up. So I'm like, okay, maybe I'm just out of shape or something, saying that there was just Thanksgiving. I'm like, just skate off the turkey. Mm-hmm. But eventually it like kept happening until middle of December. We've been going to the pediatrician for all this time, and like steroids, Flonase, all this stuff. Not really expecting much of it, but we went to an allergist thinking like, oh, maybe you have like an allergy to something, you're just reacting bad. They said you're not allergic to anything. It is weird that like your face is swelling. So like, have you gotten an x-ray yet? No x-ray. So we get an x-ray and they see like a mass on my chest. So I'm like, don't know what this is. So CT the next day. Then we get shipped down to Children's Hospital. And then a few days later, which ironically is my birthday, I get diagnosed with stage 3 Hodgkin's lymphoma. I can't really say I was like I was just like shocked the most. Like I didn't really like have a too big of a reaction. Like I was just more like shocked that wow, this little thing was this giant problem like right in my chest. So
you get that kind of news though, and you kind of like people go along in life and they just think life's great and I'm playing the favorite sport that I like, and all of a sudden boom, you get hit by something like that. What was your first reaction? Were you mad? Were you scared? What were you when that happened?
I can't really say I was like scared because I don't really get like shaken up by too many things, but like my first instinct was like, okay, well, I'm in the hospital with all these doctors and medical professionals. I'm like, they definitely have the knowledge and all this stuff to help me through this. So I'm just going to put my trust in them and think positive and let's just get through this.
One of the interesting things about your story, Bailey, is that not only what you just said there, which is tremendous and a great piece of advice for anybody who gets kind of news like this, is that you started focusing on other people. It wasn't just about Bailey, it was about focusing on some other people and other kids in the hospital. Talk about that a little bit.
So for me, I was like being a hockey player, I was like with my team basically 5 days a week for practice or games. And then again, like take it away from that and put in the hospital, I'm like, okay, who am I going to talk to? Like my mom and dad are here. It was like, I don't have like the giant locker room full of all my teammates.
Right.
Like whenever I was in like the infusion room, there'd be the kid next to me and we'd both be like uncomfortable because like we're not used to this. So like I would reach out to him to start a conversation just so like we can like bond over what we have like in common.
Mm-hmm.
So we can like cope through this as like a team in a way with like the doctors and all of them.
So you and then you noticed that there were some kids in the hospital and there was a need there. And so how did you come up with Bailey's Bottoms and Random Acts of Kindness?
So for me, being 16 at the time at Children's, there's mainly kids like around like ages like 5 to 10-ish in the oncology unit. So me being one of the older kids, they didn't really have as many of us compared to the younger kids. And I wasn't allowed to wear my own clothes because like I needed to be sterile and all this stuff. So I had to wear the tie in the back gown with like the no slip socks that the hospital provides.
Right.
And I didn't have any pants on. So I bet you can imagine how uncomfortable that is just sitting there days on end without pants on in a uncomfortable place. So eventually we got a pair of camo sweatpants that I could wear from the Child Life Man. And I was like, wow, I feel a little bit better now that I actually have a pair of pants on. So thinking that it took like 3 days, I believe, for me to get a pair of pants, like how long it could take. Like there was like 5, 16, 18-year-old kids out there and they can only get like, it'd take like weeks maybe just to get a pair of pants.
Right.
So my mom and I went to our hockey banquet that summer to raise money to buy a bunch of like pajama bottoms to donate to the hospital so they can have like a stock and they just pull pajamas for all the new cancer diagnoses there. And so that goes down the hill and the 50-50 drawing turns into a Facebook ad that like, hey, donate money and we'll put pajama bottom or take pajama bottoms down to Children's Hospital. And the community just floods in for this, and I can't thank them enough for all the help they've had or they've given me the last few years with this. But we were able to donate 200 some pair of pajama bottoms just within the first month.
Did you ever think as a 16-year-old kid though that you could do something like that? I mean, kind of faced with that, but that's pretty young to come up with an idea, but you realize that at 16 you're still capable of pulling something like that off.
Right. And I think the coolest part was like it started with like my teammates and then their teammates from other teams, and then it like grew to my brother's teammates, and like the entire hockey organization just kind of came together to get one thing done. I felt that was really awesome to see happen.
What did you learn about yourself, Bailey, through this whole incident, the sickness and then also giving back and creating this amazing charity? You've been doing this for 3 years now. How many pairs of pajamas have you been able to buy with all you've done?
I can't even tell you an exact number because about 200 years, so like we're probably getting close to like 600-700 pairs of pajamas. But
And it's just a simple thing, right? I mean, it's like pajama bottoms are you wouldn't even think about that, but the way you explained it in terms of how, from your standpoint, you just didn't want to sit in the hospital with nothing.
Right.
And so, what are the other kind of things that kids like when they're in children's hospitals? What could another kid in any part of this is going out to kids all over the country? What else could they do besides something like a Bailey's bottoms, like a pajama bottoms thing? What are kids looking for and asking for and needing, is from what you could see?
Most people in the hospital, this is speaking on my behalf, I really liked whenever like I got like a card in the mail, because like you could, like people, like my team couldn't come into the hospital because like there's like all these requirements and stuff that they need to be up to date on with all their medical records and stuff. So like if I got a card from like, let's say one of my teammates saying like, "Hey Bailey, I hope you're doing well, keep fighting, I'm here with you," just like seeing it like that from them, just like something physical to like hold and read from them, I thought that was really cool.
Yeah, so it's not always just a thing that somebody might give you. It's something that was personal, that somebody was let them know that they were thinking of you. So that's a pretty simple thing for somebody to do, is write a card to somebody to, encourage them and that type of thing.
Right.
So what's next for you? What type of things? How long do you want to keep this going? Is this is this something you intend to do for a lot longer in your life?
I'm hoping to do this for as long as possible, because I just love being in the hospital and like talking to people that have been through or that are going through the things that I've went through, and like using my background with it to talk to them and help them through it. I think that's one of the, like, giving back is one of the things that I think is just amazing.
Well, people would like to read more about Bailey's story. It's on page 137 of The Positive Athlete, and he's one of our 100 most inspirational stories. And Bailey, thanks so much for spending time with us and encouraging other kids, and keep doing what you're doing. You're a special guy, and I know Positive Athletes had a great relationship with you for a few years now. So good luck to you, and thanks again for spending time with us.
Thank you.
And next up, we're going to be talking to Pam Jonker from Children's Healthcare of Atlanta about some things like Bailey talked about, things how you can help some kids in your community. We're joined right now by Pam Jonker from Children's Healthcare of Atlanta. And Pam, welcome to the show. Very positive person that Pam Jonker is, as I've known her for a while. Pam, first question I have for you, though, is what's the difference between a children's hospital and, I guess, an adult hospital, what you might call it, an adult hospital?
Well, a children's hospital, we only take care of young people from birth to 21. After that, it's an adult facility. We really believe that we do that with excellence at all of our children's facilities. And children are not just small adults. Children have their own growth plates. They have their own things that happen in their bodies. It's totally different from an adult. And that's why we believe that children should only go to children's facilities.
And you have you're a network of hospitals around the country, other children's hospitals. So as our viewing group is a national viewing, so is it pretty easy to participate and help a children's hospital in your community?
It is. We're all part of the Children's Miracle Network system, and that's kind of like an umbrella. So if you go to, say, Costco or Sam's and they're doing a fundraiser and you see CMN, Children's Miracle Network, that means they're raising funds for hospitals all over the country. And wherever you are, say you were in Marietta, Georgia, your money would go then to Children's Healthcare of Atlanta. If you were in a different state, your money would go to whatever. If you were in Pittsburgh, it would go to the Pittsburgh Children's Hospital.
Pam, you had an opportunity to read the story of Bailey Julian, the hockey player up in Pittsburgh, and here's a high school kid that is not only a patient but turns into somebody that could help his community in his children's hospital. What did you think of Bailey's story, and do you guys have you experienced some of the things that Bailey's done?
Yes, we have experienced some young people who've given back like Bailey has. What a great idea that he had about Bailey's bottoms. That's a wonderful thing. And we have something similar to that, which are our pajama packs. And any children's hospital likes to have pajama packs. So in our pajama packs, we would have like pajama bottoms and a top and a pair of socks and some underwear. And young people can actually do that for their size. So that's what I like about young people thinking about this, is thinking about what would they like? What size do they wear? What would they be able to do? For instance, blankets for the beds. There are baby blankets, but young people love to have maybe a certain sports team blanket. We've had some of our young people put together these flannel blankets, and you cut them and you tie them, and then we take them to the hospitals for our young adult patients. We also have young people who put together meal packs, because when you're in the hospital, families have an opportunity. It's hard to get to the cafeteria and get meals, and we put together meal packs that have single serving portions in them, and we've seen young people do that. One thing we've seen young people do is for their birthdays, have a birthday party for children's. And so they would then, their friends would bring birthday gifts and give them for us to have at children's, and that way we can give them to our patients. That's another great opportunity for young people to have a party and have fun, but also let someone else benefit from them.
So I think what you're saying here is that you're not too young. If you're a middle school kid or a high school, you're not too young to be able to give back to your community and give back to a children's hospital, are you?
That's right. You're never too young. We treat children from birth to 21, and we need items and we need things for all ages. I know a lot of times young people will ask me, well, what can I do that will help? And they think whatever they do will be so small. Then I tell the story about Bertie Wardlow. Bertie Wardlow is my personal hero. 102 years ago, Miss Wardlow found the reason because her nephew had a really bad infection in his leg. And when she saw him get the best care he could receive, she wanted that for all children, but she didn't know how to start. So what she did with her meager means was she started selling pencils. She sold pencils. 102 years later, 3 hospitals, 20 neighborhood locations, all exist because Bertie Wardlow sold pencils to help all children get the best health care they can.
You also mentioned to me one time that a lot of times the staff currently, as we're taping this, we're going through the COVID-19 issues, and that your staff sometimes, which has really been taxed through all of this, really responds well to people thinking about them too.
They sure do. We have had some wonderful children in some elementary schools who've done little bags, put some snacks and water in them, and drawn a picture for our emergency department staff, and they love that. They just like to feel loved and appreciated too. So anything anyone can do, and if you know someone who works at a hospital, and particularly a children's hospital, as I'm talking about, a sign in their yard, a note on their car, anything that makes them feel like, wow, this is important. Because right now we are going through the COVID situation, and they're having to wear masks 7 times. They're cleaned 7 different times before they can be thrown away. So they're having to go through a lot of difficulties right now, especially with all of our children with the immunocompromised. They have a very difficult time, and we have to be real tight on our regulations currently.
You have a neat program called Send Us Smiles, if I'm saying this correctly. Talk about it a little bit.
Right. That's something where even when you can't go into a hospital or facility, you can go onto our website, www.choa.org/send-a-smile, and you can send a note to a patient and just tell them you're thinking about them, you're praying for them, you're wishing them well. It's just a real special, positive way to reach out to our patients.
Well, thanks for spending some time with us, Pam, and we wish you and Cho and all of the other children's hospitals around the country the best, especially during this time, because those 6 kids are very vulnerable, I'm sure, to some of the things with this pandemic and this flu. So you probably really have to protect them, don't you?
Yes, we sure do. We have to be very, very careful with all of our children and their families and our staff.
Well, thanks again for spending time with us, Pam. Well, that's all the time we have for today. Hope you enjoyed the show. If you would like to read Bailey's full story, as well as 99 other inspirational stories of high school student athletes, ask your parents for our new book, The Positive Athlete. You can find out how to order the book on our website, positiveathlete.org. We have some great professional Olympic athletes lined up for future shows, so be on the lookout for our next edition of Lessons in Positivity. Have a great and positive week, everybody.